Well, hello everyone. It's 1 o'clock on the hour, so we'll get moving on this. And as people join, they can catch right up with us. I want to thank you all for joining today. This is make men's health your priority, and this is a topic. I was asked to do it, and I love doing this topic because it's one that isn't talked about enough, especially with this month being Men's Health Month. I think it's something that needs to be talked about more, and from a male's perspective, it's something we don't address enough. So just so you have a little bit of background on myself, I've been in the business of health and wellness for several years. I've been at Borslow for 7+ years, and I have a community health education background. So I have given this topic a lot of times and have addressed it in a lot of different ways. And it's always a topic that no man or no male wants to talk about, but I like to push it as much as I can. So my name's Travis Horn at Borslow Insurance. This is what we really do for our clients and for a lot of our different members. And it has to do a lot with putting wellness in place, things like this, like webinars and tip sheets, and being able to put a program in place is important, even just for men's health, but also for the business as a whole. So I'm sure you've heard the names or have heard Borslow Insurance, and that's really how we approach our clients. Let's move on to the more important factor here, which is men's health, and talking about what's available and what happens within our worlds of men's health. The facts is, we're going to talk about the facts. Something that people don't realize a lot of times is there are a lot of facts out there that have to do with men's health compared to even women's health, which I want to talk a little bit about. We're going to talk about the common diseases and disabilities, which I'm sure everyone here on this call has heard of, and it's not anything new. It's just things that sometimes we have to reiterate and talk through even more, so we can have them forefront of our minds. We're going to talk about risk factors, some signs and symptoms that you should know about, as well as ways to improve health. And you're going to see through this presentation, which 25 minute webinar, you're going to see that everything kind of plays together. When you have one, sometimes there's 2 or 3 risk factors, and which is why I want to end on Men's Health Week, which again, it's Men's Health Month for those that don't know. And I'll talk a little bit about what that is and how that works within, which can work within your business, your organization, your school, whatever it may be. But it's something that most don't focus on, and I like to focus more as much as I can. So first off, let's look at the facts. Here we have, and yes, I will put it out there so everyone knows, my wife tells me this all the time. She is going to live longer than me, so she always tells me. And I believe it. In a life expectancy from a male is 77. Today, we're all living longer. We're all doing a lot more to take care of ourselves, but some are not. And just so you know, and so if there are any women on this call that can know it, their life expectancy is about 81, 82. And so it's just a part of who, the genetics that we're made up of. And a lot of times that's how it works. And you can see with the different stats that are on here, the did you know stats, there are a lot of things that develop within men as well as women, but within men that we're not aware of because we don't get them checked out. A lot of times men don't go see the doctor. They don't get their physicals. They avoid those things. Again, I've been in this business a long time, and I've talked to a lot of different men. And I always talk to the Department of Public Works. They're my favorite group. Great bunch of men and women, but the men predominantly, they don't go see their doctor. And I always have the conversation with them. Just if you can go see a doctor once or twice a year, you can avoid a lot of these. And that's the purpose behind having this conversation today, is to know that there are things that we all can do to make sure we take care of ourselves first, so that we can live longer. And so, the big one that always scares me, and I'm going to talk about at the bottom here, is 1 in 2 men will develop cancer, and it will probably be prostate cancer, because for the majority of individuals that get cancer, it'll be the skin cancer, it'll be prostate cancer. And by the age of 80, a good stat out there that I always like to push out there, if you are lucky enough to be the age of 80 years old, chances are you will have or have had prostate cancer. So 90% of men do get prostate cancer. Something to think about, something to know that you can help to get that early, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we move through the different disabilities and common diseases that we see today. So these are the ones we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about cardiovascular disease. We'll talk about high blood pressure. What is it? How does it work? We'll talk about high cholesterol. I'm going to go into basics. I'm not a doctor by any means, but what I do is I do have the back end of how to help if you're overweight or obese. Some different things you can do. I'll give you some tips and some different ways to help yourselves or to help others that may be in your lives. Maybe it's a father, it's a son, or it's yourself in general. We'll talk about diabetes. We'll talk about prostate cancer, high level, as well as depression, because these are the big ones that usually affect men in general. And it's things that if we don't address them ahead of time, then they only mature and get worse as you get older. All right, so cardiovascular disease. A lot of individuals hear the word cardiovascular disease, the words cardiovascular disease or CVD. For a lot of people, this is a big part of their lives because 58 million Americans have cardiovascular disease, and it's very common. It's the #1 killer out there, and it can be the silent killer, as some will call it, or even high blood pressure. For a lot of times, it can be that silent killer, but high blood pressure is that most common one that we see from cardiovascular disease. And how does it happen? Well, there's a lot of different things which we'll talk more in depth about, but the biggest risk factors out there is your age. So as we age, we have to watch our blood pressures. We have to make sure that blood pressure is in a certain level, which I'm going to talk a little bit more in depth about, as well as our gender plays a big part of that, as well as our family history. A little backstory about myself so you can kind of get a feeling for it. So my father passed away at the age of 59 years old. He had high blood pressure, he had diabetes, he had depression, he had a lot of risk factors. He didn't take care of them. And, when he got older, those things caught up to him. He ended up having a quadruple bypass. He had to get some stents put in place, and he had a lot of blockage in his arteries. So, it's those things where family history now that I know that, I have to, look at that when I go see my doctor. We get some tests done, we make sure we have baselines, and we make sure we continue to, address anything that comes up ahead of time. So it's all about being preventative. Prevention is a big piece right now, and these things that I'm about to talk more about, you'll see that if we can start to address them now, it really becomes saving lives in the future. And so from cardiovascular disease is high blood pressure. And so most know, how they get their blood pressure taken. You go into the doctor's office, doctor puts a cuff on your arm. The cuff, they pump it up a few times and then they give you a number, and that number can be, there's two different numbers. You've got your top number, your bottom number, top number being your systolic number and your bottom number being the diastolic number. And so what does that mean? If you have high blood pressure, you're pre-hypertensive is what they call it. And that means you're in between the 120 to 139 over the 80, over 89. Now, this is a place where you can easily drop those numbers and help yourself long-term if you are to take care and take some different measures, things like your diet, things like exercise, things like making sure you're doing the right things on a regular basis, like decreasing the amount of alcohol that you drink on a daily basis, or smoking. And there's a ton more different risk factors out there that increases our blood pressure. But if you want to know the signs and symptoms, those are things can be more looked at. And the biggest one, I'd like to tell you is chest pain. If you have a chest pain on the right side of you, on the left side of your arm, and you have some chest pain going on, and you have difficulty breathing just walking up a flight of stairs, or maybe you get severe headaches on a regular basis, that's time to go see the doctor and to really have them take the blood pressure and see if you've gone into the stage 1 or stage 2. But by doing things like exercise and nutrition, you can absolutely decrease that blood pressure and move it in the right direction. The next one is high cholesterol. High cholesterol, there's two types of cholesterol for those that don't know the cholesterol piece of it, and there's LDLs and HDLs. LDLs is your low density lipoproteins, and this is your bad cholesterol. Just something to think about for this one is less than 100. You want to be 100 or less. If you start going over 130, then that's high cholesterol, and that's something where your doctor is going to talk to you for the most part, just like pre-hypertension. They're probably going to ask you to take a baby aspirin, or they're going to ask you to take a medication that will help to thin the blood. And so HDLs, what you want is you want that to be high. What that means is if I'm over 60, I have high HDLs, that's a good thing. it makes my total cholesterol be higher. But if your HDLs are high, then it's in a good range. Then that's what you want. And the reason why most people get high HDLs is because they have the right diet and they exercise. They eat things like omega-3s from fish. They eat things like plants, vegetables, fruits, things that are healthier for their diet. It helps to increase that HDL and decrease that LDL. And so for those who are visual like me, I took a picture of something we use in our office quite a bit. And that is, it's a little artery walls. So think of these red circles as your artery walls. And what happens is with cholesterol is as we eat bad foods, and a lot of times it's like red meats, things that are high in saturated fats, then this plaque that you see, the yellow in the middle, starts to gain on the walls. It starts to enclose the walls. So sooner or later, you can get a blockage. Now, if that yellow is complete all the way through, then you can have what's called a blood clot because there's no blood going through the arteries to the heart in that certain artery. And so a lot of times they'll do bypasses or they'll give you a statin drug that'll help to thin the blood so it can go through the arteries a little easier. There's a lot of different things that can occur when you get a blockage. And so to avoid that, it's all about exercise, nutrition, family history, again, age. I keep saying the same thing over and over because they all play in the same way. And I'm a big proponent of moderation, especially from exercise and eating right. But as we age, it gets harder and harder. So we have to be very careful about being overweight or obesity or having obesity. And I put some information up here that I don't think is not knowledge for most on this call. And if it isn't, then here it goes. It's really about taking care of your weight and not being obese, because the higher the obesity and the overweight, the larger the health problems will occur. And usually it's heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, and cancers. And this can be avoided. And so, a lot of people ask me about the BMI and is that really something that is usable? And I used to be a personal trainer. I don't have certificates anymore, but I still personal train, when, folks or friends ask me to kind of help them out. And the BMI is something that it's a good base. It's, everyone will say, well, I'm 26, but I don't have a lot of fat. Well, it gives you a base. If you're really concerned about what you see here from a BMI perspective, meaning if you're a 25 to 29, it says you're overweight on the BMI scale, which is called a body mass index. Then the best thing to do is a waist to hip ratio. And it's a very simple thing to do. You take a measuring tape, you measure your waist, you measure your hips, and you divide the waist from the hips ratio. And what it does, it comes up with a number. It gives you a base. It helps you down the road. And it's just a different way of measuring from an obesity to overweight perspective. So, take this for what it is. It's just a chart we've used for a long time in the fields of personal training and nutrition. And it gives you a basis so that you can kind of keep yourselves in the 25, 24 range. If you start getting in 30 range, then really there's something that needs to be looked at. And usually that has to do with exercise and nutrition, right? It's always the same thing. It's just something just to be cautious about. So pre-diabetes is the next one on there. And this really has to do with high sugar levels. And it's high blood sugar levels. Pre-diabetes is something that you want to, when we get to this point, this is when you need to make the change. You need to be proactive from a pre-diabetes perspective, because once you get to a type 1 or type 2 diabetes, and the signs and symptoms are similar to what you already know, right? I'm just going to put them up on the screen so you can see them. Fatigue, extreme hunger, irritability, blurred vision. A lot of times, people haven't had any type of sugar in their base when they're pre-diabetic, they can get very faint. So you really have to be cautious on getting to that point where pre-diabetes turns into diabetes. And that is something where I would say, if you want to fix that and turn that pre-diabetic around, then it's usually about talking to a personal trainer or going to a nutritionist. In our business, we have a lot of different strategic partners we work with, and the biggest one to work with have to do with exercise and nutrition. And so be cautious when that starts to happen and you haven't had any food for a long time, because a lot of people will call it hangry, right? And that a lot of times it's because you haven't had the right foods to keep yourself moving, but it can turn into a place where it goes from pre-diabetic to diabetes. The second to last I'm going to talk about is prostate cancer. So very common, right? In males, it's very common for skin cancer. Prostate cancer is really the most common with with men. And it's very similar to what we've already seen, right? It's one of those things where we need to get checked out as soon as possible. The doctors will tell you all the time, and my doctor tells me all the time, when you turn 50 years old, you need to have a prostate exam. But there are actually some, other doctors that will say, if you have it in your family and there's someone close in your family that has had prostate cancer, let me go back on that one. If someone in your family has had prostate cancer, they'll tell you to come in at the age of 40 or 45 years old to have a checkup and to get checked out for prostate cancer. Because like I already said earlier, 90% of you, if you make the age of 80 years old, will have had prostate cancer or have had prostate cancer. And so it's important to get checked out, to get the doctor. It's not, it's not a comfortable thing. It's not something we want to do, but the faster we get in there and we get to see our doctor to figure out if there's any issues, the better off we are, and they can catch it ahead of time. The last one I will hit on is depression. So depression is something that not just men, women are the same way, but I think men do it more. And as a male, I can speak freely on this one. I think we hide a lot more things. We don't want to go see the doctors, and we don't want to admit when depression is close to us. And it affects a lot of us in a lot of different ways. And not only does it affect our mind, but for those that have had depression, it affects your body. It affects sleep. It affects how we work with others, and it affects, if you've got kids, irritability. There's different signs and symptoms I would say to look out for. And if you're, individually, you think you're on the cusp of any of these signs and symptoms, I'm a big proponent of saying rest and relaxation, finding a way to reset the mind. For me personally, I've done things like yoga. I've done things like meditation, diaphragmatic breathing. Finding ways to shut off and reset is an important piece for depression. It's with anything in life. If you don't address it ahead of time, then it will just get worse over time, and then it will affect people around you. And that's what we try to avoid. And so from a mental health perspective, there are so many tools and resources out there, from any care you have, from your medical insurance, to just looking online and being able to do a diaphragmatic breathing exercise through an app, or to something like Calm. So I think there's different ways to look at it. I just I want to address this in the sense that if you're feeling sad, anxious most of the time, then there's someone out there for you to talk to, or for a resource for you to look at. Because if there's disruption in your world, there will be soon disruption in everybody else's world. And again, it's all about prevention. If we don't prevent this now, then it just becomes worse down the road. So let's talk about more of how the common risk factors are for all those things I just talked about. So I talked about a little bit of family history. So for me, and I'm going to use myself as the example, I think it's an easy way to go down this path, is family history wise. I know my father had depression. So it's something I watch out for a lot, and I'm very proactive about making sure that as my family moves forward, just keeping track of my son and things like that. Because if we don't look at family history and we don't address family history at the forefront, then it can become an issue down the road. Age-wise, as you get older, right now today, there's a big thing about resilience. There's a big thing in the market, in the health and wellness industry, about making sure we're knowing what our real age is. For some of taking health risk assessments, you can go ahead and ask several questions, and a lot of them have to do with stress management. It has to do with being resilient and knowing that from an age perspective, where are you and what you do. And usually it has to do with your diet, nutritional habits. Do you have a lot of alcohol on a daily basis, or do you drink a lot of soda on a regular basis? The diet and nutritional habits are key to obesity and overweight. So the more you can address that, the better off you'll be. Nutritional habits. I'm going to share something I wanted to put up on the screen, and I think it's on the next slide. I'll share it with you so you can kind of see it. But from a screenings perspective, These are the screenings that the men are supposed to be getting on a regular basis. Now, something I didn't realize, I just found this out. I was kind of looking at it this morning like, oh, I didn't realize that was the case. But so most people right now, it's down in the industry with physical exams, and everybody knows why. I'll say the word COVID. COVID happened, and so people stopped getting their physical exams. I would say right now is the most important time for everyone, especially on this call, to go and call your doctor and schedule a physical, because we need to get back in that mode of completing our physical exams. And as you'll see, for my age, I'm 48 years old. I only need to get one once every 2 years. Who knew? I actually get it once a year because I think it's important with my family history that I need to talk to my doctor and make sure that, hey, I'm watching out for any type of heart attacks or things that could be unbeknownst to me that could happen. But here's the different screenings that you should be doing and when you should be doing it. This is going to be coming out after this. I'm gonna send out an email once I put this whole video up on YouTube, so you guys can take a look at it. This webinar up on YouTube, and there'll be a whole sheet on this that maybe can be passed around. So from a male's perspective, you can make sure you're getting the right tests when you should be getting the right screenings. Exercise routine. That's a huge risk factor. If we're not doing any type of exercise, then it really starts to wear and tear on our body. It's important to get 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, 7 days a week if you can. Even 5 is good enough, just as long as you're doing something. And a big piece of this is what's the routine. It doesn't have to be going to a fitness center. It can be just walking outside. It can be gardening. It can be going getting a chainsaw and cutting down a tree. I mean, sometimes I just do exercise that way to give myself a little bit of physical activity in the day. Common risk factors: stress, alcohol, smoking. I don't think I have to say that to anyone on the call. This is something that happens on a regular basis for most. If you have this in your life, then what you don't want to do, for most, you get 1 or 2 risk factors in our lives, but once you start to get to 2 or 3, then that's when the red flag has to go up, and we have to be cautious on our overall health from a cardiovascular perspective. And that's why cardiovascular disease is such a big piece of this, because a lot of times we get those extra risk factors in our lives, and it shuts down our body, our internal body, and and our heart. And so lastly, second to last, before I let you go, is ways to improve your health. I talked a lot about this already. I wanted to share this today because it's near and dear to my heart, because I have kids, and they love to eat the wrong things, even though you tell them don't do it. But so I'm putting this label up here so you can take a look at it, just get a feeling for what this is. This is the #1 seller in the world. This is the #1 seller soft drink in the world. And most of you will probably think it's a soda, but this is actually a Red Bull. And the reason why I put this up there is because I actually coach baseball. I've been in the health and wellness field for a long time. And so, I see a lot of kids, and I have a lot of adults near me. And I see these in adults and kids' hands all the time. And, for most, they use it as an energy drink, but for a lot of people, they drink 4 or 5 of these a day, which is an unbelievable amount of sugar, caffeine. There's really no nutritional value to this at all. And most people, when I talk to them about this type of drink, it's only 160 calories. And I get it, but this is one of those things where if we're not watching what we're taking in from a substance perspective, not just alcohol, not just drinks, but also from a food perspective, then a lot of times that puts a lot of extra risk factors on our lives. And so the things you can do is getting plenty of exercise, which I talked about. Very important, watching the weight, cutting back on sodium and salt. Those are the things that can really help you to go more to the healthy side. As well as I already talked about getting physical exams, which is important, and get your blood pressure checked regularly, because your blood pressure is that silent killer that just creeps up on everyone. And most people do not know it's there until all of a sudden it happens. But I would say the biggest thing you can do is get some R&R, and I've been pushing a lot, this with my family as well as in the business that we're in, Borslow Insurance, because I think right now is the time where we need to decompress. A lot happened in the last year and a half, and if we don't decompress and relax and be able to reset our own minds, it's only going to get worse from a stress, from a health perspective down the road.
Hey, Travis.
Yes.
There's a question. Did you see there's a question on what is your opinion of the PSA test, which I think is a really good question.
The PSA test.
For the prostate. Isn't that the prostate
okay.
test? Yep.
Yep. What is, so let me read it. I'm sorry, I didn't even see it. PSA test. I don't have an opinion on that. I'm going to be honest. I need to look more into the PSA test. Kim, do you know a little bit more about the PSA test?
I just know that I do know that they have false positives on those often. But I mean, my opinion is any test is better than no test at all. And that if your doctor's recommending it, I would get it and then ask the questions as as you go through that process. That would be my take on it. Because as a woman, we have those tests too. Like there's mammograms that can be false positives. So that would be my recommendation.
It's funny, my doctor's never recommended that one.
I think because you're not 50 yet, you youngin'.
Well, I know, that's the thing, right? It's coming. I hear it, right? I definitely, it's something I've been looking into a lot more. And thank you for the question. I will definitely put some answers together for that one. Just lastly, because I know we're running short on time and I don't want to keep everyone on this, so we're Blue Day. I know there's a Wear Red Day, but this one's really never talked about. So I wanted to put it out there so that individuals know this is Men's Health Month. Wear Blue Day really is about wearing blue to support not only yourself as a male, but also your father, your son, any men within your lives, because this is something that we have to make more aware of, the different issues and concerns that we have in our health in our lives. And so, this Friday, if you want to wear blue to support Men's Health Month or Men's Health Day, that would be great. And I think it's something that we need to push forth to our coworkers as well as our families and those that are around us in our lives, because it's only there to help make our lives better and really bring to the forefront what the issues are in men's health. So I want to thank you for your time today. If there are any other questions, we have time right now. Feel free to put them out there in the Q&A and we can answer them. If not, you'll be seeing in the near future, we'll be sending out to all our wellness champions information that I'm sharing today, as well as on from the Men's Health Day, as well as on any of the prostate cancer, on being from the hypertension perspective. I'll be sending a lot of that via email and it's there available. And so I want to thank you all very much for your time and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thanks. Oh, where can I get a woman's screening chart? Oh, that's a good question.
There is one. You know what? I will share that as well.
Okay.
Because I have one and I can share it as well.
Okay, great.
I can send it out in that email. So I think that's a great question. Thank you.
That is, yeah. Why don't we add that to the email? Perfect.